Silas Greer was hailed as a local hero, a fearless firefighter who saved lives and inspired a town. But Kendrix Vale, a rising true crime YouTuber, suspected something far darker beneath the praise. When Kendrix vanished during his investigation, Detective Rowan Elric began to uncover a terrifying truth. The man everyone worshipped had been orchestrating the very tragedies he rescued people from. As evidence surfaced and lies unraveled, Rose Hollow would learn that their savior was, in fact, the monster hiding in plain sight. Kendrix Vale had become a household name in the online world. His YouTube channel, Dark Lens, specialized in uncovering hidden truths behind unsolved crimes, local legends, and official cover-ups. With over 1 million subscribers and growing influence, Kendrix was considered a fearless investigator, often going places traditional media avoided. He prided himself on honesty and uncovering uncomfortable facts. But on a warm Tuesday afternoon, Kendrix walked out of a suburban cafe with a camera bag slung over his shoulder and was never seen alive again. The last known footage of him came from a gas station camera just 2 blocks from where he parked his car. He looked focused, carrying a paper bag and holding his phone as if replying to someone. That same evening, he had planned to upload the first part of a new documentary, teased earlier that week with the title The Mask of the Rescuer. Fans had speculated about its content as it seemed to hint at corruption in the fire department or emergency services. The tagline was chilling. When the person saving you is the one who put you in danger, who do you trust? 2 days after Kendrix's disappearance, his car was found in a remote area near the Millbrook hiking trail. His backpack was still inside. The drone was untouched. His laptop and camera were gone. The doors were locked, and there were no signs of a struggle. Despite the eeriness of the scene, local authorities treated the case as a missing person incident, possibly an accident. They assumed Kendrix may have gone exploring, gotten lost, or suffered an injury, but his fans weren't convinced. Neither was Ray Linford, his longtime editor and friend. Ray was the first to raise alarm. She had spoken to Kendrix just hours before he vanished. He had told her, cryptically, that he had found something big, something so disturbing it would shake the town. He said he couldn't explain over the phone, but would upload everything soon. Then silence. For days, she called, emailed, and messaged him. No response. That's when she contacted the police and handed over an external hard drive Kendrix had mailed her the week before. Inside were folders labeled Project Mask and notes about a series of local fires and rescue operations that didn't quite add up. Meanwhile, in the community, search efforts gained momentum. Volunteers from town showed up to comb the woods and trails, looking for any trace of Kendrix. Leading the charge was Silas Greer, a firefighter with over 15 years of decorated service. Silas was known as a community hero, someone who had saved lives in fires, floods, and even car wrecks. His reputation was spotless. He gave interviews to local news stations, calling Kendrix a brilliant mind and pledging to bring him home. People praised Silas for his leadership and kindness. Social media exploded with hashtags supporting both him and Kendrix. Silas was everywhere organizing food for searches, helping law enforcement navigate rough terrain, and even holding late-night vigils. To most, he was the shining example of what a true public servant should be. No one questioned his sincerity. No one wondered why he seemed so invested. But something didn't sit right with Detective Rowan Elric, a quiet, observant man with years in homicide and missing persons. Rowan had dealt with enough liars and manipulators to recognize when things were too perfect. Silas's sudden involvement felt staged. Not a single day passed without his face on the news. Not a single effort lacked his presence. For someone grieving and helping, Silas was too polished, too presentable, too careful with every word. Rowan began watching footage of his interviews and noticed something strange. Silas always talked about Kendrix in the past tense. As days passed and no new evidence surfaced, pressure grew on the police to find answers. Fans of Kendrix began their own investigations online. Some dug through his past videos for clues. Others tracked recent fire incidents in the town and compiled them on forums. And one obsessive Reddit user uncovered something that would change everything: a hidden message in Kendrix's teaser video that hinted at the identity of the person he was investigating. A person he believed had killed before. A person hiding in plain sight. No one knew it yet, but the mask was about to slip. Detective Rowan Elric began his quiet investigation into the trail Kendrix Vale had left behind. The external hard drive, handed over by Rhea Linford, became his starting point. Inside, Kendrix had meticulously stored research under a folder named Project Mask. It contained a timeline of emergency response calls over the past 10 years, including fires, rescues, and accidents. What caught Rowan's attention was how often the same name kept reappearing: Silas Greer. According to Kendrix's compiled data, Silas had been either the first on scene or involved in the aftermath of more than 30 separate incidents. Many were house fires where no one was hurt, yet each incident had earned Silas praise in local news outlets. Over time, Kendrix had started to suspect a pattern: that these disasters were not entirely natural or accidental. He theorized that someone had been manufacturing crises and then stepping in as the hero to build a false legacy. Kendrix had dug deeper, pulling records of insurance claims, witness statements, and fire reports. Several of the reports were inconclusive, with causes labeled as unknown or accidental. The suspicious part: most of the fires were located near where Silas lived or trained, and many of them happened during his off hours. One in particular stood out: a small warehouse fire that Silas discovered while jogging at dawn. It was extinguished quickly, but an anonymous tipster had emailed Kendrix claiming they saw someone matching Silas's build leaving the site earlier that morning. There were screenshots of messages between Kendrix and the anonymous sender, who called themselves Torch. They warned Kendrix that the person he was investigating was dangerous and manipulative. The last message from Torch simply read, "He sees everything. Don't get too close." That message had been sent 2 days before Kendrix vanished. Rowan shared his concerns with his captain, but without solid evidence, they couldn't bring Silas in. On the surface, Silas was a model citizen. No criminal record, glowing references, and a long history of community service. But Rowan's instincts were screaming. He decided to visit the Millbrook Trail where Kendrix's car had been found. While combing the area again, Rowan's team discovered a small fragment of burnt paper lodged in a crevice near the parking lot. Forensics revealed it had traces of accelerant and faint handwriting. Though most of the text was gone, a single legible line remained. He lights them to feel needed. It wasn't enough to tie anyone to a crime, but it supported Kendrix's theory that someone had been starting fires not for destruction, but for recognition. Meanwhile, Rhea was working quietly to recover more files from Kendrix's online backup. She remembered he had set up automatic syncing to a private cloud service. When she accessed the folder, she found a hidden video clip labeled Barn Watch 3. It showed shaky footage taken from a drone. In it, a man who looked like Silas Greer could be seen near an old barn, pouring what appeared to be fuel onto wooden pallets. The time stamp was just 3 days before Kendrix disappeared. Rowan watched the video repeatedly. The face was partially obscured, but the posture, build, and movement matched Silas almost perfectly. More importantly, this barn had burned down in a mysterious electrical fire 2 days later. With Silas again being the first to respond, Rowan began to understand that Kendrix hadn't just stumbled onto a theory, he had been on the verge of exposing a calculated pattern. The puzzle was becoming clearer. Silas had created his public image by crafting disasters he could heroically resolve. Fires, wrecks, collapses, all orchestrated for applause. It was clever, theatrical, and deeply psychopathic. But now Rowan faced a bigger challenge, proving it. The town worshipped Silas. Any accusation against him would be met with disbelief and outrage. What they needed was undeniable evidence, a piece that couldn't be explained away or dismissed, and that piece was still out there, waiting to be uncovered. As Rowan expanded the investigation, one question haunted him: had Kendrix gone too far, gotten too close, and triggered the hero's final performance? The case began to spiral into the public eye when an unexpected voice entered the narrative. Hollis Brandt, an obsessive true crime enthusiast and Reddit investigator who had followed Kendrix Vale's work from the beginning. Known for his wild theories and obsessive timelines, Hollis had posted a detailed breakdown of Kendrix's final video teaser. Unlike most fans, Hollis noticed something unusual: what appeared to be a GPS overlay glitch near the end of the teaser. A brief flash of coordinates tucked into a transition frame. It was easy to miss, but he slowed the footage down frame by frame and matched the coordinates to a remote forested region just beyond Millbrook Trail. Hollis's post went viral on Reddit. People argued whether the coordinates were planted or accidental, but it caught the attention of Detective Rowan Elric. Rowan took the location seriously and arranged a search of the specified area. The coordinates pointed to a patch of woods far from the trail, inaccessible by vehicle. Search teams hiked in on foot. After nearly 2 hours, they found something buried under a mound of brush and leaves: a hidden steel hatch, rusted around the edges and partly welded shut. Fire crews cut it open, and what they found inside was horrifying. The hatch led to a small underground bunker about the size of a large shed, lined with thin metal walls and faintly stained concrete floors. There was a single chair, a broken camera, and a vent pipe above, which had been purposefully clogged. The air was stale, the lighting was gone, and in the corner lay a decomposing body curled in a fetal position. Dental records later confirmed what everyone feared: it was Kendrix Vale. His body showed no signs of physical trauma, but toxicology reports revealed high levels of carbon monoxide. He had suffocated slowly, trapped in a chamber that had been carefully engineered to ensure silence. No blood, no struggle, just a gradual, calculated death. The crime was methodical, as if the killer had planned every moment with surgical precision. Forensic teams found charred remains of hard drives and torn documents near the body, signs that Kendrix may have tried to hide or destroy something before dying. It wasn't clear how long he had survived down there. Days, perhaps. His phone was missing, and his camera was shattered beyond repair. But one chilling discovery changed the case completely: a small strip of duct tape with a partial fingerprint embedded in it. Preliminary analysis linked it to a familiar name: Silas Greer. Now the image of the town's heroic firefighter was starting to collapse. Silas, who had organized search parties and spoken with the media about hope and determination, had left behind physical evidence that placed him inside Kendrix's final resting place. Still, the case needed more. Fingerprints alone could be explained, especially given Silas's involvement in the search efforts. But for Rowan, the veil had lifted. He now saw Silas not as a suspect, but as the predator Kendrix had tried to expose. Media pressure exploded. News stations camped outside Silas Greer's house. His reputation began to crack. Online, people who once supported him now demanded answers. Yet Silas remained calm. He appeared in public with practiced sincerity, deflecting questions and continuing his charade. To many, he was still the man who pulled children from burning houses and saved lives. To others, he was now a monster hiding in plain sight. As Detective Rowan dug deeper into fire department records, he found more disturbing patterns: missing logs, gaps in surveillance, and unsigned reports. Silas had used his position to control the narrative around emergencies. He had removed threats to his image before. Kendrix was just the first person who dared to look behind the curtain. The final piece came when Rhea received a strange anonymous email. Attached was a video file simply labeled for Kendrix. When decrypted, it revealed raw drone footage that Kendrix had captured days before his death. Clear visuals of Silas Greer carrying a fuel canister into the same barn that would burned down to nights later. The face was unmistakable. The truth was no longer buried underground. It was now visible for the world to see. And what began as a search for a missing YouTuber had become a chilling portrait of a killer who built his legacy on flames, ashes, and lies. Detective Rowan Elric stood before a wall filled with pinned photos, timestamps, maps, and documents that connected the chaos of Kendrix Vale's final days. The case had evolved from a missing person search into a chilling homicide investigation that exposed an elaborate web of deception. The footage Rhea had received, the drone video capturing Silas Greer at the scene of a future arson, had given investigators the first undeniable visual proof. The man celebrated for saving lives was now directly tied to the cause of the disasters he had claimed to prevent. Rowan knew that approaching the case too aggressively could backfire. Silas still enjoyed public support from many in the community, especially older residents who saw him as a protector and symbol of selflessness. Despite growing whispers, there had been no formal charges yet. Rowan decided it was time to strike with caution and certainty. His team quietly obtained a warrant to search Silas Greer's property. The search uncovered more than expected. In Silas's basement, behind a false wall, investigators found a hidden room lined with old uniforms, scrapbooks of newspaper clippings, and charred pieces of debris labeled with dates and addresses. Each memento corresponded to an emergency incident, from Silas's past, a burned shoelace from the Jefferson House fire, a melted toy from the Holloway apartment blaze, even a badge belonging to a firefighter injured in one of the rescues. But perhaps the most disturbing item was a handwritten journal with no title. Inside, Silas had documented detailed plans for each staged fire or accident. Some entries included diagrams of buildings, emergency response times, and entries titled Performance Review, where he critiqued his own actions during the rescues. One line stood out on a page marked a week before Kendrix's disappearance. "He knows. He's filming. He thinks he's safe." It was now irrefutable. Silas had seen Kendrix as a threat not just to his public image, but to the entire persona he had built over 15 years. Kendrix had unknowingly walked into a story too dangerous to tell, and Silas had ensured that story would never be published until now. The journal, video footage, fingerprints, and burned evidence from the underground bunker came together to build a case that would be impossible to deny. Rowan briefed the district attorney's office and prepared for the arrest. When law enforcement finally arrived at Silas Greer's home, with a full warrant and a camera crew trailing behind, the scene was eerily calm. Silas greeted them at the door, expression unreadable. As officers placed him in handcuffs, reporters swarmed. He didn't resist. He didn't speak. He only turned slightly toward the cameras with a faint, chilling smile that unsettled everyone who saw it. The public response was immediate and divided. Some refused to believe it. Letters of support flooded the station. Others, especially Kendrix's viewers, rallied behind the investigation as more of Kendrix's research was shared. Online, people began to piece together the horrifying truth. The fires were not random acts of misfortune. They were carefully engineered events in a grand performance staged by a man obsessed with admiration. In court, the evidence unfolded in devastating detail. Rhea testified with composure, sharing Kendrix's final messages and recovered files. Hollis Brandt, the online investigator who helped crack the location, was brought in as a key witness. The drone footage was played, the journal read aloud, and photos of Kendrix's body shone with reverence and horror. Silas Greer remained stoic through most of the proceedings, breaking silence only once to say, "I gave this town a hero. You all asked for one." The trial became one of the most publicized cases in recent history. True crime channels dissected every detail. Podcasts exploded with theories. Kendrix Vale's channel was revived posthumously with a new series titled Exposing the Rescuer, which chronicled his final investigation, with Rhea narrating. Though justice had begun, the damage was permanent. A community had believed in a man who orchestrated suffering for praise. A young creator had been silenced for trying to reveal the truth, and a legacy once built on bravery was now reduced to manipulation and murder. In the weeks that followed Silas Greer's arrest, the town of Rose Hollow fell into a state of stunned silence. The image of their long-standing hero, the man who had once stood on podiums receiving medals for valor, was now replaced with courtroom sketches and mugshots. News vans lined the streets around the courthouse. The trial of the century unfolded in real time. But beneath the headlines and media frenzy, there was something deeper, unraveling an identity crisis for a town that had unknowingly glorified a killer. Detective Rowan Ellert continued his work, focused not just on securing a conviction, but on understanding the full scope of what Silas had done. Forensic teams analyzed old arson cases that had previously been ruled accidental, now reopening them with fresh eyes. Rowan met with families who had once praised Silas for saving them, some of whom now realized he may have caused the very fires they'd barely escaped. The betrayal ran deep. What once felt like miracles were now reinterpreted as moments of theatrical cruelty. Rhea Linford, meanwhile, dedicated herself to preserving Kendrix Vale's legacy. She partnered with several true crime journalists and launched a documentary series using Kendrix's research, voiceovers from his old content, and testimonials from those he had helped. The series didn't just focus on his murder, it honored the purpose behind his channel, showcasing other cold cases he had touched. It became a global phenomenon, with millions tuning in not just to understand how he died, but why he mattered. Silas Greer's trial lasted for months. During that time, his past rescues were turned inside out. Prosecutors brought in fire experts who testified how certain blazes had signs of accelerant use that had been overlooked. A pattern emerged that was hard to deny: fires in abandoned buildings, isolated homes, or places where Silas could be the first to arrive and the only one to emerge as a hero. The journal found in his basement was introduced as evidence, with passages read aloud in chilling monotone. Lines such as "fires cleanse and command loyalty, and pain is necessary to create gratitude" turned the courtroom cold. Witnesses recounted Silas's manipulative charm, his obsession with praise, and his controlling nature behind closed doors. Some remembered how he had discouraged investigations, quietly pushed reporters away, or cast doubt on anyone who questioned him. The prosecutor described him not as a man with a God complex, but as one who played God in a town to trusting, to notice. Silas never confessed. He remained silent throughout the trial, refusing to testify, declining all interviews, and offering no apology to the families affected. When the jury returned with a unanimous guilty verdict on multiple counts of murder, arson, and obstruction of justice, he showed no visible reaction. Life imprisonment without the possibility of parole was handed down without hesitation. Even then, the story wasn't over. 6 months later, during renovations of an old firehouse where Silas had once worked, a hidden crawl space was discovered. Inside were charred belongings, scorched photographs, and another journal, this one older and more detailed. It included entries from over a decade ago, describing the earliest fires and his thoughts afterward. One entry read, "If no one notices me saving them, then what's the point of saving them at all?" It confirmed what many feared, that Silas's darkness had started long before Kendrix Vale's investigation. It had only grown more sophisticated over time. Kendrix's death had unearthed more than a murderer. It had exposed the psychology of performance, the dangers of unchecked adoration, and how evil can disguise itself in acts of valor. Rose Hollow, once proud of its firefighter turned savior, had to confront its role in letting the myth flourish. Today, a small memorial stands near the entrance of the Millbrook Trail, where Kendrix's car was found. It's simple: a plaque, a camera sculpture, and the words "truth is worth the risk." Flowers appear there every week, many left by strangers, and in a final twist, Kendrix's last unfinished documentary, The Mask of the Rescuer, was completed posthumously by Rhea. It ends not with rage or grief, but with Kendrix's own words. In a recovered voiceover, Heroes don't need to be seen, they need to be real. If someone insists on the spotlight, maybe they're not a hero at all. The truth, once buried, now stood in the sunlight.